Welcome back. Let's continue the conversation on the stability of the government of national unity. We're joined this time around by another panel of guests, this time SACP spokesperson. Then joining us, Dr Alex Mashilo is on the line. Patriotic Alliance's Cilliers also joins us this evening with the Good Party's Herron also on the line. Jama-ah's Ganief Hendricks also joins us then as well. Gentlemen, to all of you, thank you so much for your time this evening. Appreciate it. If I may start with you, Cilliers, is the GNU as solid as it was on day one?
Yes, I would say that this is an indication that the GNU is in good shape, as ironic as that might seem, because what we're seeing here is a maturation of the GNU, and the fact that they were not able to agree on a proposal from the finance minister, and we believe it's in the best interest of the country. And if you were part of the discussions in cabinet this morning, you would have seen that everybody was really broadly against this VAT hike, including many ministers, or most of the ministers, or perhaps even almost all the ministers from the ANC, who spoke up. And in the past, perhaps they might have felt that they had to toe the party line. So what the GNU is doing is it's introducing debate, freedom of expression, and we're contesting ideas more than you would have seen before. So we believe this is a very good thing for the country. The only thing that we're finding disappointing about it is that the DA has decided to try to hijack this whole thing and make it seem as though they were the only ones fighting, and they're claiming this as some sort of DA victory, when it's a GNU discussion, and everything was done with respect, and it was the GNU that decided to postpone this thing. And we really feel it's very opportunistic of the DA to try to claim a victory here. No party should be claiming a victory here. Yeah. And that attitude isn't really going to help. And I think that they have to take some of the blame for the tanking of the rand here, because they're making the markets think that the GNU is unstable. But nobody threatened to leave today. We need to be more mature about how we address these things out there in the public.
Brett, was today a victory for the GNU, you think?
Well, I agree with Charles and his assessment that the GNU is stable, and I think this is a natural outcome of governing, co-governing. And I also would take issue with the political analyst that you just interviewed, who assumes that this is the DA schooling the rest of the parties in the government of national unity on how to govern as a coalition, because that's simply not the case. There are 10 parties to this government of national unity, and all of the parties who are in the government of national unity were opposed to increasing VAT from 15 to 17%. And the DA didn't school anyone on how to operate a coalition. The DA participated as an equal partner in this government of national unity. And we found consensus. And that consensus was that the budget was not acceptable to the parties who have signed the statement of intent and formed a government of national unity and co-govern. And so we sent National Treasury packing and back to the drawing board for them. But that was a consensus position and not a position that the DA schooled the rest of us on.
Dr. Hendricks, or Mr. Hendricks, if I ask you this question, this was meant to just be a proposal. The finance minister usually puts forward a proposal, which is what this is meant to be. This budget is proposed. And then after that, Parliament gets to actually agree or disagree on it, and then only does it actually pull through. Should we have actually heard the budget first, or should we have actually just said no to this budget much earlier on?
Look, as you know, we've been busy with budget since September.
Yep.
And now we are starting a new process for the next year's budget. And you correctly stated that it kicks off with the budget speech, which the Minister of Finance shares with the nation. So early this morning, the President felt that the government of national unity must be given heads up and on some of the issues so that it doesn't come as a shock to them. Now, all of us know what the fiscus needs for the next year, because we're busy with this for the past few months. So what happened was that the Director General indicated that there's a shortfall of 80 billion rand. How are we going to finance it? And then the announcement was made that it will be funded by a 2% VAT increase. Now, your viewers are not supposed to know that. You know, what happens in Tainis must stay in Tainis, but someone took it out of Tainis. Every document of the cabinet, it's top secret, and the president went out of his way to tell everyone, that what happens here must stay here. However, some political parties did not respect that, because the first time the nation should have heard about a 2% VAT increase was when the Minister of Finance makes his statement, and not before that. So yes, we were privy to that kind of information, but one or two political parties decided to break rank. So we can't trust them in the future, to respect the top secret documents, the confidentiality that should exist in Tainis. So what was very interesting, the immediate response by all the 10 leaders was, how can we assist the minister? And even the Democratic Alliance, indicated that, look, this time around, I may have difficulty, but I've sent proposals while we were talking to the president, how we can raise that 80 billion rand instead of having a 2% VAT increase. So the whole morning, we were busy trying to see how we can assist the Minister of Finance. And we also made a point that we now have to, this 2%, came as a complete surprise. We have to go back to our party leadership and then try and get them to to accept it and to understand that we're in a very difficult position. And the DA undertook to do that and said, he'll try, but he's going to have some difficulty. So that's the spirit
let me put
in which
this.
The government of national unity addressed this. So it was planned that the president will fly.
Mr. Hendricks, let me bring in the SACP. And the reason I want to bring them in is because if we're going to have discourse among the GNU parties in the way that Mr. Ganief Hendricks has just been speaking about then, and saying then ultimately that on the day of is when other political parties are then told of certain elements of this, and then they break what is supposed to be known as protocol ultimately by letting people know, or if that happened to be the case anyway, right? This is all supposition in fact as well. But we knew this before the speech was even put out. Is that a problem in itself? Is that the breaking of ranks? Should we be worried more about that than the actual figure itself? Because I would think that the figure does matter, but this other element also is important. What do you think?
We indeed must be worried. I agree with Brad and Charles, and to a greater extent also with Mr. Hendricks. But I think it was Brad who underlined a particular point I would like to return to. But in this instance, there was a violation of the law by people who claim to be upholding the law. I will take you back to when the Guptas will meet with someone, let's say Fikile Mbalula, then to tell him that he was going to be appointed the minister. I am mentioning this because it was at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. What you have seen here is a political party called the DA violating cabinet secrecy. In other words, violating the law, seeking to undermine all other parties to elevate itself, even ahead of the budget being unveiled. The president and law enforcement agencies have to deal with that. There is another problem. There is another problem though. The budget, if you read news outlets like the Bloomberg and others, there is a circle in the National Treasury that supplies budget information to the media and gives them privileges, whether embargoed or otherwise. That thing violates the law because it does not give all of us an opportunity to reflect at the same time. That's why when the minister finishes speaking, when they have written reports because they have received the budget in advance, all they do on their computers is to press enter for their stories to go. Practices like these ones have to come to an end. If I may come to another angle, which is not part of your questions. The SACP is in alliance with the ANC and COSATU. There is a problem there. You cannot have the type of consultation we have read in the media between the ANC or the Minister of Finance with the DA, and there has been no consultation within our alliance. That is a problem. Now, when you look at the responses of these political parties, starting with the DA, which seem to have been relied upon on the basis that if it brings its 21%, there is 60%, and could undermine minority parties in the government, that DA proved to be unreliable to a policy agenda that the ANC thought they will be with it. By the way, the DA is going to be caught with serious surprises.
Sure.
Its macroeconomic policies, if I may conclude the point, its macroeconomic policies and budget expectations are anti-workers. And what it has tried to do is to elevate the point that we ourselves and other political parties have elevated on the VAT, while behind they are driving a serious anti-worker agenda. They have unleashed a machinery against themselves, which they are about to see in the coming weeks.
I hear your point. Charles, let me get you very quickly. We have to go to an ad break, but I want to get your thoughts just very overall. Just the sentiment being laid, it's unfair, but we'll try to get the DA to also respond to all of this because they do have a right of reply to this. But what is your thoughts with regards to the breaking of certain protocol, the element of this was only supposed to be known when the budget was actually proposed by the finance minister? That not ultimately being the case here, where does it leave us?
Look, I don't know if anyone knows for sure who was the leak or if we're just speculating here. But I do know from, I was previously a journalist, that the concept of confidential information leaking isn't something that started now in the GNU. We've seen this over the years, even when there was just one party in charge. So as much as, yes, it's a very sanctionable offense to not keep your top secret information top secret. We have seen this before, and it's going to require more discipline from the parties. I can assure you there was no one in the PA that did it, because we do take the vows of office very seriously. Every minister that put their hand on the Bible or took a oath of affirmation promised to keep the secrets of the state secret. So that's something that they're going to have to look deep inside to deal with. And it's not a joke. You know, we are running Africa's largest economy here. Just
put forward, I mean, there is an embargo.
By the way, just before you go there, I want to highlight something, Charles. Please look into this.
Very quickly, Alex. We've got 30 seconds.
Just quickly. It is unprecedented that we hear about who said what in the cabinet. So just converse with the leader of your party, Charles, because if you look at his tweet, he really explains who spoke first in the cabinet, followed by who. He did it so well because he was engaging with the DA, which was out of order, trying to throw all other parties under the bus. But it is misconduct what he did, because you'll never do that.
Okay, we're gonna get into the weeds of it a little bit further if we can, gentlemen. Thank you so much for that. We're gonna continue this conversation right after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Then let's continue our conversation on the stability of the Government of National Unity. SACP spokesperson Dr Alex Mashilo joins us. So too does Patriotic Alliance's Cilliers, Good Party's Herron, and Jama-ah, Ganief, Hendricks also on the line. Thank you so much again to all of you, gentlemen. Just before we had started this, we had been speaking just about ultimately breaking of protocol and what that does to this GNU that we are trying to bring together. Herron, your thoughts?
Well, look, I mean, the breaking of protocol is a serious matter which the president, as the leader of this government and the cabinet, must deal with. But I think we must remember that the Minister of Finance always briefs the media and members of the opposition parties in a lockdown session on what is contained in the budget speech, before the budget speech is actually
even the media, delivered. He even does so with the media, correct?
So there are many people who had access to what was in that budget speech, but the leaking is not really, I think, the main issue here. There was speculation before the leak that there was going to be a proposal to increase VAT. What is really the issue is that the Government of National Unity is a new way of governing. And what we've seen is National Treasury conducting themselves as if it's business as usual. And to attempt to brief party leaders who make up the Government of National Unity on the morning of the day of the budget, so at 7:30 this morning, the party leaders were briefed on what was going to be in that budget. When there are 10 parties in a Government of National Unity, it's just no longer going to work. So National Treasury, the Minister of Finance, the Finance Department, they need to understand that it's not business as usual. And this crisis that we've created could have been avoided if there was consultation earlier, with enough time to make the call that this budget was not ready to be presented to the people of South Africa and tabled in Parliament.
Mr. Hendricks, you've also just said that we were doing work on this budget already from September, if not a little bit earlier. So are we saying there just wasn't enough consultation even from then, despite already knowing at that stage that we had a GNU?
Look, you must understand that the Minister of Finance has the delegation to present a budget.
Yeah.
So he has a technical team. And the process kicks off by him. He doesn't have to consult anyone. If he does it, maybe that's best practice. But he has to present a budget, and then he has the thrill of coming with some sweeteners, increase here, increase there. And then he has a dig at a lot of other people. We're going to increase the price of beer and so on. That has been the tradition. And then a 3-month process kicks in before we finally vote on 40 votes that makes up the budget and then consolidate it with a final vote. So the worry here, of course, is that when it comes to the final vote and the 2% VAT increase is going to fund the 80 billion rand shortfall, then we won't have enough numbers to pass the budget. So I think that was the reason why the president may have felt, let us rework the budget and find other alternatives to raise the 80 billion rand shortfall, because the fiscus is the fiscus.
Yep.
We know that we have to accommodate the 5.5% increase for civil servants. We may have planned 3%. Now we need to find more money for that. There was a court judgment about social grants having to be increased.
So, Mr.
All
Ganief,
those things.
Mr. Ganief Hendricks, what happens if we don't find a solution then by 12th of March?
Look, what will happen on the 12th of March is that the Minister of Finance will come up with a budget so that we balance the books. And there may be items when it comes to revenue, and I have some ideas, and other political parties have some ideas how we can raise the 80 billion without having to increase VAT. My political party's position is, if anything else, VAT must be decreased, and that there should be a turnover tax to cover the shortfalls like we have now. So, okay, come the 12th of March, the budget is presented, and then there's a 2-month process, and eventually, there are 40 votes that parties vote on. And in the last budget, I think it was a midterm budget, we also had the DA voting for some budgets and voting against other budgets, and we were still part of the GNU.
Understandable.
So,
Okay.
So it is not a thing that the minister has made a statement, and tomorrow there's money in the bank for us to fund next year's, this year's activities from the 1st of April.
True. Okay. Charles, if we find a solution and 12th of March happens, we have that budget speech, it comes to the fore, we're all, I suppose, to a large extent, as happy as can be at that point in time. Would this have proved that indeed we're stronger as a government of national unity? Because it isn't business as usual, and we are questioning things. It's more vibrant, it's more democratic.
Look, my view is
sorry, Mr. Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks,
that we are much more stronger.
Mr. Hendricks, apologies. I was actually asking Charles there.
It may not have been necessary for the president to give the members, the leaders of the GNU heads up, because this is a technical exercise. The Minister of Finance has a delegation. He doesn't have to worry with anyone else.
Yeah.
He must just do his job, present a budget, and hope for the best.
Brett, I'll come to you. Brett,
he knew that they had the votes of the ANC behind him, so it will be passed.
And now he doesn't have those. Brett, I'm going to come to you in just a moment. Charles, that question was initially for you. Do you agree with what you've just heard?
Thank you for that. Look, I think that they will find a solution. I mean, this will be a fascinating moment to see how this plays out. I'm not going to second guess it. I also just felt that I needed to respond to what Dr. Mashilo was saying, that, I mean, maybe it's misconduct for Gayton to set the record straight, but when there's such a big lie being told and the DA knows that they're going to benefit by everybody else being well behaved, the only option there is to tell the truth. When such a big lie is being peddled, then you must resort to the truth. And I do believe that nobody would have taken issue with how he represented them. And I think it's a strange situation that required a strange response, right? But that's not going to be the behavior. And if everybody respects each other and the confidentiality, then this will never happen, right? So we back what he did, and we believe that he has the backing of cabinet to have brought the truth to light.
Yeah.
So that was important. And, to answer your question, we believe there will be a solution. And it cannot be 17% VAT. I mean, that's just unfortunately going to hit the poor and the middle class.
So where's the money going to come from?
Well, I think that it's actually shocking that we just keep trying to milk the population, right? Where is the discussion around where we're going to start cutting costs, right? And as the PA, we believe strongly that that government needs to facilitate more and be less active in the running of the country and leave it to the people to start running the country. So we need to start taking lessons from countries that have actually turned inflation around through cutting the cost of government, because our government is becoming an extremely costly exercise.
You're going to get the SACP riled up on this one. And I knew Alex was going to come in. I knew it. Alex, Brett had something to say initially first. Let me go to him first, if you don't mind, Alex, because Brett, initially you had also disagreed just a little bit with what Mr. Hendricks had been pointing out, but just your response overall.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to differ slightly from Mr. Hendricks with the notion or the idea that the budget is the Minister of Finance's delegation and the President extended a courtesy to party leaders when the budget was shared with the party leaders who make up the party's leaders who make up the government of national unity. There's a saying that you can tell a government's priorities by their budget, and we have a coalition government now, which is governed by a statement of intent, which sets out the priorities for this coalition government and how it and what it will achieve over the next 5 years. And so that budget that was going to be presented today had to really be informed by the statement of intent that the 10 parties agreed to, the priorities that are in that statement of intent. And so there was a duty on the Minister of Finance and the President to consult with the parties that make up the Government of National Unity before that budget was presented. So that's where I wanted to differ with Mr. Hendricks. I don't accept that it's the Minister of Finance's prerogative to present and table a budget. And I don't think that he regards it as his prerogative, which is why he did brief party leaders this morning, but clearly too late in order for us to avoid what happened today.
Yeah, just yesterday on the show, we had a discussion around communication of this budget and how consultation actually happens and how critical it actually is at advancing the entire mechanism of this budget. Alex, I know you've got a heavy response here. Let's talk about that. I also have a question for you as well shortly after that.
Okay, no. I quite like the way Charles handled the question. Look, Minister McKenzie came out forthright to expose the DA's lies. Because the DA was lying. They were the only ones who said 1, 2, 3. And what Minister McKenzie did was to show a list of several ANC ministers in the cabinet who spoke against the VAT. I'm saying even if I personally liked that, you never do it because cabinet discussions are top secret. In fact, there is no need for us to be beating about the bush about where the leakages came from. The DA was the first party in the government that went out through a statement rejecting, showing that there was consultation with it and then it differs. And then it became a lead about the so-called speculations in the media about an increase in VAT and so on. But let me come to the way forward. The Commissioner of SARS, in a seminar, indicated this week that there is an estimated 800 billion rand of uncollected tax from individuals and businesses. Now, listen to the amount that is mentioned to be a shortfall. That amount is far below 800 million rand. If you could, so 800 billion rand. So if you collect the 800 billion rand annually, which is not collected, you pay for the shortfall and you have a surplus from the 800 billion of about 500 billion rand that you can use to finance other priorities. It was completely unnecessary to hike VAT instead of enhancing the capacity of SARS to collect and if you look at the class, there are class divisions here. There is, if you read the news report, the Minister of Finance says we cannot touch big business. In other words, we must not touch rich people. We must touch the poor people by increasing VAT. I mean, people, 12.5 million who are unemployed, active and discouraged work seekers, over 6 million workers in low-wage employment, 17 million beneficiaries of social grants. I can tell you the moment you increase the value-added tax, they no longer have access to the same basket of goods and services that they had before. So you are attacking the workers and poor by saying we must not touch the rich who can afford everything for themselves. That is nonsensical.
Yeah, I completely hear what you're saying. I'm going to ask for final comments, gentlemen, if I may, in just a moment. Before I do that, Alex, I'm going to give you a very short while if you can. But I need you to respond perhaps to me if you can, as an alliance partner, to the conversations that were heard on that hot mic between Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana as well as Minister Kumbuzo Nyachiweni, just around Edward Kisweta. Are you aware of any kind of conversation or disgruntlement between the two, and what is the issue at play, if you know anything?
Look, I referred to a seminar where Edward Kisweta made a point that there is 800 billion in uncollected tax from individuals and businesses. And if you can follow there is no need to increase the VAT. He is absolutely correct. That information is from the core of our tax collection authorities. Other than that, there is nothing I am aware about. So I know that our leaders sometimes are victims of opened mics, but those mics gave us access to what they have had to say. It is important we go deeper to understand that. But insofar as he said, it is unnecessary to increase VAT while there is 800 billion rand uncollected in taxes from individuals and businesses. I mean, he is right.
Yeah.
He is right, and that is the solution that finances the entire shortfall and caters for other priorities. Is that not so?
Yeah. True. So, of course, that conversation was had with the minister in the presidency there, Kumbuzo Nchaveni, being had just after we had that press conference a little bit earlier. Gentlemen, I have 30 seconds for each of you. Please, if you could give me just closing statements with regards to where we are, the strength of the GNU, ultimately what you see happening. Mr. Hendricks, perhaps let me kick off with yourself.
No, thank you very much. We're talking about process here. So I also had a difficulty in briefing my leadership. I didn't tell them that there will be a 2% VAT increase. What I told them is that there will be a debate in Parliament on the fiscal policy. We will have an opportunity to put our case there, and the party must then put its position. And then, we all know that later on, there are 40 budget votes, and each one has the opportunity to speak on it and vote on it, for and against. Yeah. So that process has not been followed, and confidentiality has been affected. The ANC, the cabinet, which consists of ministers and deputy ministers from 10 political parties, they will also raise their concerns, and we hear that many of them were not happy. But they also had to respect confidentiality. Yeah. I know that the ANC is having a 10 o'clock meeting tomorrow, a caucus meeting about all these matters. So these are processes that will take place, and I expect that the ANC should raise its concerns when the debate takes place on the fiscal policy. There's no time for debates now. The minister has a delegation, and I don't agree with Brett. He has the delegation. He doesn't have to negotiate with anyone. That's a technical job that he has. He's done his job.
Okay, heard, understood, and I think that also goes to the point you made a little bit earlier, Mr. Hendricks. Thank you so much for that. Brett, 30 seconds as well, your closing thoughts.
Look, I think the GNU comes out of this process stronger. There's lessons that surely the parties that are in the GNU have learned, and that is that we are co-governing, and that we have to improve our planning and our processes and our consultation, so that major policy decisions like a budget, which is a policy decision and is a political decision, are made early enough for parties who have issues with some of its content or all of it to have those issues addressed. So this is a stepping stone in building a solid coalition government. And I think a hard lesson learned by all the parties in this coalition that consultation and communication needs to take place more frequently, and certainly not at the very last moment.
Mr. Mashilo.
No, look, I don't want us to build strength in the mind while the realities have showed themselves today. I mean, we cannot use the disaster of today to say that it shows that the GNU is strong. There was massive wasteful and fruitless expenditure. People flew from all over the country, booked hotels, accommodations. There were preparations. So that is the disaster. It need not be repeated. What we need is the way forward. And Edward is right. We need to chase the 800 billion rand in uncollected taxes to fund the fiscal. We need to see broad-based industrialization. We need to create employment. We need to stop these policies that are designed to attack the poor who need help, who are being attacked because other people are saying, let us not touch the rich people who are wealthy, who can do the things themselves. We need more In fact, we need consultation within our alliance. Consultation in the GNU and its partners cannot be a substitute, because this will lead to a liquidation of the movement if things proceed in this particular way.
Certainly not what is ultimately wanted at this stage. Charles Cilliers.
Sure, I'll be brief. Just 2 points. I think the one is that parties have to learn not to do these cheap political point scoring exercises in this. The DA can't ever do this again, or any other party.
Yep.
And I find myself agreeing with Dr. Mashilo, but I want to add to that Thabo Mbeki did a fantastic study many years ago on the transfer pricing that happens with big corporations. We are losing hundreds of billions of dollars. Companies that are moving their profits offshore without paying any tax on that. And beyond that, if we can grow the economy at 5% or more, the tax base is going to grow. There'll be so much more money to collect.
Yes.
So we need to focus on growing the economy, being positive, and then we won't have to go around taxing the poor.
Agree with you more on that one. Charles Cilliers, thank you so much for the time. Gentlemen, thank you to all of you as well. Look at the time, it's 10 o'clock. We're even late for the next bulletin. Appreciate your time. Let's get straight to an ad break. We'll be back with your news headlines after this.